Well, hi everybody and welcome to another piano video here on the Merriam Pianos YouTube channel. My name is Stu Harrison. We are going to be taking a look at an instrument today that's part of a category of instruments that we really haven't looked at all. And that would be MIDI controllers that start to veer into the category of digital pianos. And really only by virtue of the fact that a lot of them have 88 keys, and many of them come as semi-weighted or in some cases even fully weighted versions or options available to people. But it's not something we've really taken a look at because of course we're always so focused on sound and kind of the musical innate qualities that any particular instrument brings, and MIDI controllers are really just buttons. No onboard sound to speak of. But it's become such an integral part of music making for so many that I thought, why not include some of these on the channel? And we've got one to start with today, which is the M-Audio Keystation 88.2. This is a current offering from M-Audio. It is a semi-weighted, touch-sensitive MIDI controller. It's very, very easy to set up. There's some basic programmable MIDI controls that are available on this. It interfaces very well with all of the standard DAW stuff. So we're gonna walk through what this has to offer, what the playing experience is like, a few other observations, and finally, to cap this all off, we're actually gonna do a playing comparison between it and a Kawai NOVUS 5. Obviously, we know this is not gonna be an apples to apples, but I'm really curious to know just how different the MIDI output between the two is actually gonna be. So I'm gonna do my best to play two versions of exactly the same piece as closely as possible, and we're going to take a look at the MIDI information and see what we get. So thank you so much for joining us for today's video. If it's the first time that you have seen us here on the channel, we'd really appreciate if you did hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we'd love to see you back for more videos in the future. So without further ado, let's dive right in with the M-Audio Keystation 88.2 right away. So the first thing to know about this Keystation 88 is just how simple it is to set up, plug in, and immediately start using it. There are some very intense, complicated, and possibly intimidating MIDI controllers out there that are designed to provide all kinds of control surfaces, and native sort of matched pairings of assignable controls to certain software environments, contact instruments, Ableton stuff, Logic stuff, and you sort of look at these controllers and think, oh my goodness, if I am not an advanced professional studio musician, there's absolutely no way I'll ever be able to learn how to effectively use this. And you kind of just go, not going there. The M-Audio is literally the opposite of that. You plug it in with a Type 2 USB cable. It just automatically connects to virtually any computer in any software environment that you're going to use, and you immediately have MIDI data flowing in to the DAW. Beyond that, you have transport controls, which are right here. Now, you may wind up having to assign those, but if you're using Pro Tools or Logic or anything like that, it's very, very easy to go in there and do custom assignments so that it will learn what record, play, stop, back, forward, really anything you want on that, for that to be. You've also got the ability to assign certain, MIDI commands, control commands to your modulation wheel, your pitch wheel, your volume wheel. There's also an option in here to have an expression pedal in addition to the damper pedal. So not an extensive amount of physical controls or tactile controls on this, but you've got the basics. You can decide what MIDI channel this is outputting on. You can transpose it. You can do what you want with the fader. You can, create program changes. Basically all the stuff that you want out of a basic MIDI controller. And all of the labels are right there. So to access any of that functionality, all you're doing is you're hitting your advanced button there. You're doing what you want in terms of your key commands, turning off the advanced button, and you're back to normal. So when I start to look at these kinds of things, the first thing I think is, well, could I really use this to trigger piano tracks? Because this thing is light. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know, I'm sure there is a spec sheet, I could just look, but it feels like this is like 15 pounds, you know, or so. It's very, very light. And then you play it, and then you start to realize where the limitations are of this instrument. That's not even necessarily a bad thing, because it's USB powered, it's super light, and it's inexpensive. So, you know, you're not going to get everything for nothing. But the limitation is definitely in the level of expression that you're going to be able to get out of this action. It is semi-weighted, so it doesn't feel totally foreign on the fingers to people who are acoustic piano players by trade. I wouldn't even say that's necessarily the limiting factor. The limiting factor to me here is that the MIDI output is not super stable. Well, stable's not the right word. It's really not very consistent. It's difficult to get a nice even MIDI performance if you're going to have something that's fairly exposed, like a solo piano track or even a solo Rhodes track. You're going to find likely that you're dealing with some spikes and some, you know, missed notes, because it's just really difficult to get a performance like this happening on what I assume is probably a dual sensor. Definitely not a triple sensor, might even be a single sensor. I haven't ripped this action apart to really know, but I can just tell from the MIDI output. So this is going to be great. If you're just dealing with kind of MIDI input situations, if you're laying down, you know, a bass track, or if you're laying down pads or anything of that nature, you are going to be just fine. You know, if we pull up Liverpool bass or something, I'm in Logic. You know, you don't need a great weighted 88 keyboard to do that. If you're going to be laying down synth pads, again, not very critical. Wow, that has really got a long envelope on it. Kind of cool sound though. That was boarding area, by the way. So also not that critical, you're gonna have great stuff, but when it comes to an exposed piano, this is just not gonna cut it. In fact, let me just play a few bars here of My Romance, let's say. And if I just pop over to the Novus, the kind of control you have on something like that versus like this really makes you not want to have this around for something that's piano specific. Which kind of begs the question, why would you even go with a semi-weighted 88 note control in the first place if you're not going to be able to use it to effectively input piano tracks? Because after all, isn't the point of an 88 note anything to emulate what you'd be able to do on a piano? Well, I did have that thought, and then I started thinking, well, there are a lot of other instruments that cover exactly the same range as piano. If you are inputting strings, for example, virtually the entire string orchestra range, it pretty well mimics what you can do on a piano. Maybe not so much the very top octave or the very bottom octave, but pretty well everything in between you're going to need if you're doing any strings. Pads, of course, you could be using exactly the same thing. Rhodes, you may wind up wanting to do that, but point is, there are still a lot of input options where you can get good use out of an 88 note keyboard. And this one, for its price, seems to do a pretty good job. I'm going to try and get a few more of these on the channel to do some comparisons. If anybody has a specific controller they'd love to see reviewed, let us know. We'll see what we can do to get our hands on one. One last thing I will mention that I didn't think at all I would miss, but you get so used to half pedaling now being a standard feature on virtually all modern digital pianos. It's not like 100%, is particularly when you're in the low end, but as soon as you get kind of up over the $1,000 range, most digital pianos offer half pedaling, which is really more just like gradient pedaling. You know, it's not on or off. As you slowly start to take your pedal off, it kind of mimics the effect that doing that on a real piano does. It sort of has this half pedal effect, hence the name. Now suddenly going back to a digital piano playing experience where that's not there, it's remarkable how obvious it becomes once you get used to it, which is not something that I was expecting. So we just did the performance on the M-Audio, and then we also did it over on the Novus. Now, I will say for the most part, the M-Audio performance was reasonably sensitive. But when we really get into the MIDI data, it becomes quite clear what is going on is a much more nuanced output of the MIDI out of the digital piano versus one where you've got a lot more spikes. So if we just zoom in here, this is the M-Audio output. And you can see that there are a lot more situations where you've got very, very low and very, very high velocities that are kind of just randomly showing up. There's a 2, there's a 5. So you have this big variation of color, which of course indicates that you've got a really big variation of velocities that have been inputted in here. If we go over to what we got out of the Novus, you can see that there aren't really any super dark blues or certain dark reds either, meaning that it's a much more balanced curve. And I think you could probably hear that in the performance as well. But if you don't mind going back and fixing the odd note, and you're on a budget, you know, it is possible that you could be working with this if the primary role of this wasn't always to be doing piano-related stuff. If it was the odd one off, you might be able to get away with that. Anyway, we really hope that you've enjoyed this quick look at the M-Audio Keystation 88. I believe we've got some links down below if anybody is interested in going in and finding this. We've done a little bit of work for you, so you can go and pick this up probably through an Amazon link or something like that. And most importantly, if you've enjoyed the video, please subscribe and hit that notification bell because we'd love to see you back for more videos in the future. My name's Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos on YouTube. Hope to see you again soon.